She was just a cleaner trying to survive in Lagos. But one look from a billionaire, who saw her as the perfect person to hire as his pretend girlfriend, because of his aged mother, changed her life. The billionaire thought it was just a game but had no idea. Fate had other plans for them. Before we dive into this captivating story, please support us by subscribing, sharing and commenting for more stories that will make you laugh, cry, learn and believe in destiny. Now let's dive into how it all started. Tunde Ikenna had everything, wealth, power, luxury, except one thing, a wife. At 38, the billionaire tech mogul had built a name that echoed from Lagos to London. He had estates in Banana Island, shares in oil, and a face that made magazine covers. But to his 78-year-old mother, Mama Ikenna, none of that mattered if he didn't bring home a wife. The Ikenna mansion sat like royalty on Banana Island, a palace of marble, glass and quiet secrets. At night, the house whispered with the sound of distant waves and the soft hum of automatic lights turning themselves off. Inside, however, 38-year-old Tunde Ikenna could find no rest. He stood in front of the tall living room windows, hands tucked into the pockets of his ash-colored kaftan, watching the city lights shimmer on the lagoon like scattered diamonds. On the outside, he was everything a mother could brag about. A billionaire tech mogul, clean-shaven, fine-featured, sharp-minded. His face had graced business magazines. His name was whispered with awe in boardrooms and brunch tables. But in his own home, he was just a man at war with silence and pressure. His phone buzzed for the third time that night. Mama lit up the screen. He sighed deeply. He didn't want to lie to her again. "Mama," he answered, voice tired. Her voice came through soft and aged but strong. "Tunde, my son, I have told you. If you don't marry now, I will come and find wife for you myself." He chuckled weakly, rubbing his forehead. "Mama, you know my schedule is tight." "You are always busy. But who will carry your name, Tunde? Who will give me grandchildren before I enter grave?" He had no answer. There was a pause. Then, like a quiet bomb, she said it. "I'm coming to Lagos next week. I want to meet your fiancé." He froze. "What?" "I am old. I don't want to close my eyes without seeing the woman. Who will be your wife? Prepare, I'll be there Sunday." Click. The line went dead. Tunde didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of his designer bed and stared at nothing. He hadn't planned for this. The truth was, he wasn't against marriage. He just hadn't found someone real. Lagos was full of slay queens who loved money more than breath. They came with lashes, BBLs, and soft life expectations. But Mama was old school. She wanted someone humble, modest, respectful. A woman who knew how to kneel when greeting elders. Someone who would serve food, not just snap pictures of it. He opened his laptop and pulled up a few contacts, ex-girlfriends, influencers, models, none fit. Until a crazy idea struck him. He closed the laptop and grabbed his phone. The next morning, at exactly 8:05 a.m., Tunde drove to Nonso's Lekki Phase 1 apartment. Nonso was his childhood friend, his guy for life. As the gate opened, the sweet aroma of stew hit him from the compound. And then he saw her. She was mopping the front porch, headscarf tied neatly. Small wireless earpiece in her ear, humming to herself. She was slim and tall, with the kind of grace you couldn't buy in boutiques. Her hands were rough from work, but her face had that rare softness, the kind that made you pause. "Who's she?" Tunde asked as Nonso came out to meet him. "Oh, Amaka? She's my cleaner. Comes 3 times a week." Tunde turned to face him slowly. "Can I borrow her?" Nonso nearly choked on his laughter. "Borrow what?" "Cleaner, just for 1 weekend. Pour ton fiancé. Mama's coming." Nonso dropped his water bottle. "Tunde, you're mad." "I'm serious. You're a billionaire, bro. You can hire a model, actress, even an escort. They're all fake. Mama will see through them. I need someone real, homely, clean." Nonso paused. "Amaka is all of that, Shah. But Guy, she's a cleaner. She won't even know how to pretend. I'll teach her. Or better yet, she'll just be herself." Later that day, Amaka had just finished folding clothes in the laundry room when Nonso called her. "Sit down, please," he said gently. She looked nervous, clutching her scarf. "Don't worry. It's nothing bad. I just have an unusual proposal." She blinked. My friend Tunde, he's very wealthy. His mother is coming to visit, and he lied that he has a fiancée. Amaka's eyes widened. So he wants to pay you to pretend. Just 2 days. You'll stay in his mansion, wear nice clothes, greet his mama well, and then come back to your normal life. He'll pay you N50,000. Amaka stared at them both. It sounded like a movie. Why me? Because you're decent and simple. That's what his mama likes. She was quiet for a moment. 50,000 naira? That was 3 months of puff-puff profit. She looked down at her fingers, nails trimmed short from constant cleaning. Okay, she said softly. I'll try. Back at the mansion, preparations began immediately. Amaka was taken for a gentle makeover, nothing heavy, just powder, brows, lip gloss. She wore a plain but elegant gown with flat shoes. She learned how to say good afternoon, ma, with the perfect Igbo curtsy. Tunde was amazed at how easily she carried herself. You're sure you've never done this before? She smiled shyly. I just watched Nollywood. They practiced hand-holding, gentle smiles and how to share small, convincing glances. She didn't say much, but when she did, it felt honest. And somehow something began to stir. Tunde couldn't explain it. The more he looked at her, the more he noticed her. Her kindness, her silence, her grace. Not just a cleaner, a woman. Sunday came. At the private terminal of the Murtala Muhammad Airport, Tunde stood with Amaka at his side. His hands were sweating. She looked beautiful, even with simple earrings and her natural hair packed back. Then Mama Ikenna arrived, regal, dignified, wearing pure white lace with a walking stick and fire in her eyes. She stepped down, her face stern, scanning the two of them. Tunde stepped forward. Mama, meet Amaka, my fiancée. Amaka dropped the deepest curtsy. Good afternoon, Ma. Mama's eyes softened. Ah, you are beautiful. And gentle. She turned to Tunde. Well done, my son. I like her. And just like that, the lie began. But so did something else. Something real. Something neither of them saw coming. The Ikenna mansion had never welcomed anyone like Amaka. She stood silently at the entrance hall, hands clasped tightly before her, staring up at the high ceilings and polished floors. Everything shimmered, chandeliers like frozen waterfalls, golden-framed paintings, and a staircase that curved like something out of a fairy tale. She had cleaned many houses in her life, but this was another world. Tunde walked beside her, trying to act normal, but even he couldn't ignore the way her eyes sparkled. Not with greed, but awe. And that was why he'd chosen her. He turned to her with a smile. Welcome home for the weekend. She turned quickly, flustered. Sir, Call me Tunde, he said gently. She nodded, cheeks warming. A maid appeared to take her overnight. Bag, a modest brown handbag that had seen better days, and led her to the guest room. But Tunde paused. That wouldn't work. She'll stay in the master wing, he said. The staff looked confused, but didn't question it. They had learned long ago that Tunde Ikenna's decisions weren't up for debate. Inside the master wing, Amaka sat on the edge of the guest bed inside the suite. Everything around her felt expensive, untouched, like a museum. Tunde knocked lightly, then entered with a small box. He smiled. I had these sent in this morning. You'll need them for dinner with Mama. Inside the box were 3 outfits. Elegant, simple, but stunning. A green gown, a cream blouse and wrapper set, and a classy floor-length blue dress with lace trimmings. There were also shoes, earrings, and even jewel. Amaka blinked, unsure if she was supposed to touch them. I can't wear these. You're supposed to be my fiancée, remember? Tunde teased. You have to look the part. She bit her lip. Okay, but don't be surprised if I fall down in those heels. They both laughed, and in that moment, the awkwardness between them softened. That evening, dinner with Mama Ikenna was set in the grand dining room. The table stretched long, with a centerpiece of white roses and flickering candles. Amaka wore the cream blouse and wrapper. She had tied her jewel herself. Tunde offered to get her a professional stylist, but she had smiled and said, My mama taught me. Mama Ikenna looked up as she entered, her face unreadable. But then she smiled. Amaka, come sit beside me. Tunde watched, curious, as his mother gently held Amaka's hand and began asking her questions. Where is your family from? Enugu, ma. You know how to cook ogbono? Yes, ma. Have you gone to school? I stopped after secondary school, ma. My papa died. There was no shame in her voice, just quiet dignity. Mama nodded slowly. A woman who can answer questions with respect is already a good wife. Later that night, Tunde walked Amaka to her room. She looked up at him. Did I do okay? You were perfect. She smiled, and something warm passed between them. A brief silence heavy with something unspoken. Then she turned. Good night, Tunde. He watched her go, unsure why he didn't want the moment to end. The next morning, Mama insisted Amaka join her in the garden for prayers and morning tea. Tunde expected her to complain, but instead, Amaka rose early, tied her scarf and went willingly. He watched from the balcony as she knelt beside Mama, listening to Bible verses, holding her hand gently. Mama hadn't smiled like that in years. She's special, the old woman said later that afternoon. When Tunde came to sit beside her, he didn't reply, but he felt it. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. While Tunde was taking a call, Amaka wandered into the kitchen to help the staff. I can wash those, she said, rolling up her sleeves. The maid stared at her like she'd gone mad. You're madam now, one of them whispered. Amaka just smiled. Only for 2 days. They giggled, but then Tunde entered. What are you doing here? I was bored, she said, hands in soapy water. He walked to her slowly. You don't have to do this. You're not a cleaner here. She looked up. It's who I am, sir, even if it's just pretend. He stared at her. In that moment, he wasn't thinking about lies or make-believe. He was thinking about how her presence made this house feel like home. That night, they sat in the garden under dim lights. Tunde had opened up a bottle of palm wine for his mother's sake, and poured some for Amaka too. They talked, really talked, about childhood, loss, dreams. Why did you agree to do this? He asked. She looked down at her cup. Because I needed the money. And because it felt like a chance to be somebody else, even if it was just for a moment. You're already somebody, he said softly. You don't need a mansion to prove that. Her eyes met his, warm, surprised. He looked away first. The next day, Sunday came too quickly. Mama Akena's bags were packed. But her heart seemed at peace. She hugged Amaka tightly. You are a good woman, she whispered. Do not let anything or anyone take that from you. Then she whispered something that shocked them both. Marry her, Tunde. If you don't, another man will. Tunde laughed nervously. Mama! I'm old, not blind. As the car drove her away, Amaka stood quietly beside Tunde. So, it's over? She asked, voice soft. Tunde nodded slowly. Yes, thank you. For everything. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Amaka. She looked back. I'm not sure if I want it to be over. Their eyes locked. For a second, the world paused. But she looked away and walked back into her real life. Back in her one-room apartment at Ojuelegba, Amaka sat on the edge of her mattress, staring at the plastic fan spinning slowly overhead. She had removed the gel, wiped off the light makeup, and folded the fine wrapper neatly into the same box it came in. Her phone buzzed. It was her best friend, Onome. So how was it, Madam Fiancée? Onome teased. Maka smiled faintly. It was different. The house felt like another world. Did the man touch you? Amaka hissed. Touch who? I beg, nothing like that happened. But did you like him? Silence. Amaka? She sighed. Onome. He's not like other men. He listens. He treats people with respect, even me. But that's not my world. What if it can be? Amaka's heart fluttered at the thought, but she pushed it away. A contract. I've returned to my lane. Meanwhile at Ikoi, Tunde couldn't focus. His office desk was full of pending documents, yet all he saw in his mind was Amaka, smiling shyly, kneeling beside his mother, laughing in the kitchen. She had left a mark, not just in his house, in his heart. He picked up his phone and scrolled to her contact, Amaka Cleaner. He smiled faintly and changed the name to just Amaka. Then he called. She picked after the second ring. Tunde? He exhaled, glad to hear her voice. Hi. There was silence. Then she asked, Is everything okay? He laughed. I'm not dying, Amaka. I just wanted to say thank you. You already did. And I wanted to ask if you'd like to come for dinner. Not pretend this time. Just you and me. Her heart skipped. But she said, Tunde, I don't belong in your world. You belong where your heart is. Another silence. Then softly, okay, when? It was a quiet restaurant on the island. Soft music, candlelight. He wore a simple white native. She came in a brown Ankara gown, her hair in a soft bun. She sat nervously. I've never been on a real date, she admitted. I'll make sure this one sets a high standard, he said with a smile. Over pepper soup and small chops they talked and laughed. He listened to her dreams of starting a cleaning agency, not just cleaning, but dignity for girls like me. He was impressed, genuinely. By the time dessert came, he reached across the table. Amaka, what if we didn't pretend anymore? Her eyes widened. I don't want to go back to life before you walked in. I thought borrowing you was a favor, but you're the one who gave me something I didn't know I needed. Tears welled in her eyes. Nobody has ever looked at me like this before. He stood, moved to her side and held her hand. I'm not looking at you. I see you. Back to reality. Of course, not everything went smoothly. Word got out that Tunde, the billionaire, was dating a cleaner. The blogs ate it up. From mop to mansion, the love story of the year. Tunde didn't care. But Amaka, she broke. She left his house one morning and didn't return. She felt the weight of the world's judgment. Girls from her compound mocked her. All my friends grew jealous. Even Onomi warned her. Love is not enough. Don't drown in a pool you can't swim in. Tunde drove to her compound. The dust, the noise, the chaos of Ojuelegba didn't bother him. He just wanted her back. He found her sitting on a plastic chair under a mango tree. Why did you leave? He asked. She looked up, weary. Because your world doesn't want me in it. They laugh at me. And do you care about them more than how you feel about me? She couldn't answer. Amaka, I want to marry you. She stood slowly. Don't say that if you don't mean it. I do. I've never been more sure of anything. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She didn't speak. She just hugged him tight, as if afraid to let go. And he held her like his whole life depended on it. Because maybe it did. The engagement ring wasn't diamond. It wasn't the most expensive in Tunde's collection either. But it was the only one he picked himself, walking into a quiet, family-owned shop in Surulere, far from the flashy stores on the island. It's not about price, he told the jeweler. It's about meaning. The ring was simple, gold band, a tiny heart-shaped stone in the center. Elegant, modest, like Amaka. But now, as he clutched it tightly in his palm at her compound in Ojuelegba, he was nervous for the first time in years. Inside the compound, Onom was the first to see him. She nearly dropped her bowl of ogi. Jesus, Natunda be this? Billionaire they enter our compound like that? The neighbors gathered like moths to flame, eyes wide, phones out. And there she was, Amaka, in her simple wrapper and faded slippers, confused as she stepped outside. Tunde? He didn't wait. He went down on one knee in the middle of the compound, surrounded by stunned faces and scattered basins. Gasps! One woman whispered, "Nafilm be this." Tunde opened the ring box. Amaka, I borrowed you for pretend, but I fell in love for real. I don't care where you're from, what you wear, or what anyone says. I love you. Will you marry me? Her hand flew to her mouth. Silence. Then tears. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. The compound exploded. Cheers. Ululations. A woman started clapping and dancing. Tunde stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her hand. She looked like someone in a dream. Because she was. Then came the backlash. Not everyone was happy. Social media erupted. Tunde Ekena engaged to his cleaner. Is this PR or madness? She's not even university educated. Is this some Cinderella syndrome? Even some of Tunde's business partners called to advise him. You have an empire to protect. Marry someone from your level. But Tunde didn't flinch. She is my level, he told them. Because love lifts, not divides. And Amaka, she shut down her social media. She focused on peace, on prayers, on breathing. She reminded herself, love is not always celebrated, but it must be defended. Mama Ikenna came to visit again, this time with a wrapper for Amaka. "My daughter," she said, "I wore this on my own introduction day. Now I give it to you." Amaka knelt to receive it speechless. Tears spilled again. Even Papa Okechukwu, Tunde's stern uncle from the village, eventually said, "If this is the woman that gives him peace, then let peace reign." They didn't rush the wedding. Instead, they focused on building trust, values, and a future. Tunde helped Amaka register her cleaning agency, Amaka Gold Cleaners, but he made sure she was the full owner. Her idea, her mission. "Every girl deserves dignity," she said on the launch day, "even if she holds a mop." Tunde watched her speak to a crowd of young women and journalists, pride burning in his chest. Then came preparation for the wedding proper. They kept the pre-wedding shoot simple. In a field of sunflowers on the outskirts of Lagos, they wore white native attire. Amaka barefoot laughing freely, Tunde lifting her in the air. It was more than a shoot. It was freedom. The night before the wedding, Amaka couldn't sleep. She sat by the window of the hotel, staring at the moon. Mama Ikenna came to her room with a flask of tea. "Nervous?" the old woman asked. Amaka nodded. "What if I disappoint him? What if I can't blend?" Mama smiled gently. "My dear, you did not come to blend. You came to bloom. You are not less. You are light." Amaka cried quietly into her tea. The day of the most talked about wedding in Lagos, and the internet finally arrived. If someone had told Amaka years ago, when she scrubbed the toilets at the Island Mega Plaza for 10,000 a month, that one day she would be escorted by a Rolls Royce to her wedding, she would have laughed them to scorn. But there she was, dressed in a hand-beaded ivory gown, her hair swept up in an elegant bun, her eyes glossy but alive. She stood behind the hotel curtains, heart pounding, watching the garden venue fill with hundreds of guests. The governor's wife was seated. Nollywood stars were walking in. Reporters buzzed like bees, and in the middle of it all, seated under the palm-canopied altar with tears already pooling in his eyes, was Tunde, the man who borrowed her for pretend, the man who came back for real. Back at the hotel that morning, Amaka had woken up trembling. She had dreamt she was back at Ojuelegba, sweeping the compound. And someone told her, "Wake up. This life isn't for people like you." But when she opened her eyes, she was wrapped in silk sheets, and her bridal train, 4 of her childhood, friends turned bridesmaids, were knocking, gently with breakfast and prayers. Onome led the devotion. "Father, thank you for changing Amaka's story," she prayed, voice breaking. Everyone wept. Her wedding gown broke the internet. It wasn't about the cost, though the designer had flown in from Ghana and the lace was custom embroidered. It was the transformation, the way Amaka glowed, the way she walked. Confidence, grace, royalty born from humility. The first photo uploaded online was captioned, "From cleaner to queen, this is not a movie. This is Amaka." And the internet exploded. It was time for the vows. The garden was quiet. Birds chirped, wind blew gently. Then Tunde turned to her, voice steady. "I never knew loneliness until I met you, and realized what I had been missing all my life. You are not just my wife. You are my teacher, my peace, my mirror. I vowed to protect your heart the way you healed mine." Amaka's hands shook as she read her vows. "You borrowed me to pretend. But in that pretend I found my purpose. I vow to love you, honor you, and never forget where we started, so we never forget where we're going." And then they kissed. Slow, gentle, timeless. Guests stood clapping and shouting. Mama Ikenna cried openly. Onome was already on the floor, rolling. Then they headed straight for the reception. It was held at a private beach resort in Lagos. No noisy crowd, just loved ones. But still, the whole nation watched through live streams. The first dance? Dimi Dakolo sang live. Amaka rested her head on Tunde's chest as they swayed. "I can't believe this is my life," she whispered. Tunde smiled. "Get used to it." They cut the cake, a 5-tier symbol of resilience, grace, and destiny. The top layer read, "From pretend to forever." Then came the after-party surprise. Halfway through the after-party, the DJ paused. Tunde took the mic. "There's one more surprise." He motioned to the screen. A video played, photos of Amaka as a little girl, sweeping, helping her mum hawk fruits. cleaning mansions, her journey in pictures, then a photo of her new business office. And finally, Tunde and Amaka Foundation, lifting 1,000 young women from the streets into skill-based employment. Gasps, applause. Amaka turned, stunned. Tunde leaned close and whispered, "This is our real wedding gift, changing lives together." She sobbed in his arms. Dearest listener, if the wedding was a dream, the honeymoon was a fairy tale dipped in honey and wrapped in gold. Tunde whisked Amaka away to the Maldives. She had never seen water so blue. She stood barefoot on white sand, watching the waves roll in like laughter. The sky stretched endlessly above them, and for once, she didn't feel small in the world, she felt seen. Tunde watched her twirl in a sundress. "This smile," he whispered, clicking a photo. "It's the most expensive thing I own." That night, they had a private overwater villa, flowers in every corner, the bathtub filled with roses, a playlist of Asa and Simi humming softly. Amaka stepped out in her nightwear, blushing. "I'm nervous." Tunde reached for her hand. "No pressure. We're already home." They sat in the tub and talked for hours. No rush, just laughter, memories, plans. He shared stories of his childhood loneliness. She spoke of nights she went to bed hungry. They cried. They kissed. They made love gently, slowly, two wounded souls healing each other with tenderness. On the third day, Amaka woke to find a note beside her pillow. "Come outside. Follow the roses." She followed a trail of petals all the way to the beach. There in the sand was a message written in bold, careful strokes. "Thank you for choosing me, even when you didn't know who I was." And beside it, Tunde on a mat with breakfast waiting. Pancakes, mangoes, fresh coconut water. "Let's write our own story from here," he said, handing her a shell. No past, no fear. Just us. Then came the call that changed everything. 5 days into the honeymoon, Amaka's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't pick it, but something nudged her. "Hello?" The voice was weak, familiar. "Maka, it's me. Mama Ugo, her aunt, the one who raised her when her mother died. The one she hadn't heard from in years." "Mama?" Amaka whispered. "Are you okay?" I'm not well, Maka. I saw your wedding on Facebook." "Please forgive me. I'm in Abba. I've been sick." Amaka's heart twisted. The woman who once mocked her for being too slow, too quiet, too useless. The same woman who once said, "No man go ever marry you unless na pity." But now she was calling, crying, begging. Amaka sat on the villa's deck, phone shaking in her hand. Tunde knelt beside her. "What happened?" She told him everything. They flew straight from Maldives to Abba. No cameras, no paparazzi. Just two people returning to face the past. Mama Ugo was weak, emaciated, living in a small shack behind someone's house. Amaka knelt by her sickbed. "I forgive you," she whispered. "Why?" the woman sobbed. "Because someone loved me when I didn't deserve it. And I want to do the same." They paid her hospital bills, moved her to a better facility, and then they left. Not because they were running away, but because their new life was calling. Amaka stepped into Tunde's mansion, not as a cleaner this time, but as a co-owner of the home. Unaware everything she thought she knew about her husband will soon be tested. He handed her a key with her name engraved on it. "This house was built by my money," he said, "but it will be run by your wisdom." She walked through the house differently now, head high, barefoot still, but queenly. She turned the guest room into a reading lounge. She planted tomatoes in the backyard. She gave the chefs breaks and cooked her favorite ogbono soup on Sundays. It became home. They built sweet routines. But Monday mornings, prayer walk together. Wednesday nights, cooking together, no phones allowed. Friday evenings, candlelight dinner in the garden. Sundays, visit Amaka's girls at the Cleaner Foundation office. Their love grew like a slow fire, steady, warm, sure. Tunde stopped chasing deals like a madman. He started chasing peace. And peace looked like a woman in Ankara, barefoot in his kitchen, humming while stirring a pot. Then came the storm. It started like a whisper. A call Tunde ignored. A DM from an unknown Instagram account. A photo sent to his email. Then it blew open. Everything Amaka thought she knew about her husband was tested, not because he cheated, but because he lied by omission. And this one omission? It could shatter the fairy tale. It was a Friday evening. Amaka had just finished setting the dinner table in their garden. Fried rice, peppered turkey, chilled zobo in clay cups. Tunda came down late, face unreadable. "Everything okay?" she asked, touching his arm. He nodded too quickly, smiled too softly. She felt it instantly. Something was off, but she said nothing. They ate in silence. The wind blew the lantern gently. Then he said it. "There's someone I need you to meet." Her fork paused mid-air. "Who?" He hesitated. "She's from my past." They met the woman the next morning at a quiet cafe. She was beautiful. Not Amaka beautiful, but sharp, like someone who had seen too much. Her name was Kemi. Tunda introduced her simply. "She's the mother of my child." Amaka blinked. "Child?" Tunda's voice dropped. "Before I met you, long before, it was during one of my reckless phases. We weren't serious. She didn't tell me until the child turned 5. And the child is how old now?" Amaka asked, voice trembling. Kemi spoke this time, 9. Amaka froze. Tunde had a 9-year-old son, and she was just finding out? Back at home, Amaka didn't speak. She packed her small traveling bag and locked herself in the guest room. Tunde knocked for hours. "Please talk to me." But she was quiet, because she wasn't angry about the child. She was angry that he had looked her in the eyes, made vows, spoken of building futures, without telling her about the one future he had already created. Her child is not a mistake, but hiding him felt like betrayal. 2 days later, she found a letter folded beside her pillow. Tunde's handwriting. Amaka, you always asked me to be honest, and I failed. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I was scared. Scared that if you knew the full weight of my past, you'd think I didn't deserve you. But I do. I deserve you because I'm willing to fight for this. You've never made me feel judged, only loved. Please let me fix this. Let me introduce you to my son, the right way. Let me earn your heart again. Tunde. Amaka finally met the boy. His name was Dio. 9 years old, quiet, bright eyes like Tunde's, a reader. They met at the Family Foundation Center, Amaka's idea. She watched him from afar at first, reading Animal Farm under the mango tree. Then she walked over. "Hi, Dio, I'm Amaka." He looked up, cautious, then smiled. "Daddy says you're nice, and you make the best ogbono." She laughed. "Did he tell you that I used to mop floors for a living?" Dio's eyes widened. "Really?" She nodded. "And one day, I met someone who didn't care where I started. He only cared where I was going." Dio blinked. "I like that." They started slowly. Amaka didn't rush. But with each visit, with each storybook shared, each meal eaten together, each laugh between Dio and Tunde, she started to feel it. Not resentment, but possibility. Love didn't always come clean and clear. Sometimes it came messy, with jagged edges, with truth and scars. But still, it came. One night after dinner, Tunde found her on the balcony. "I don't deserve you," he said again. She turned to him. "No, you don't." His face fell. She stepped closer, touching his cheek. "But you're mine, and I fight for what's mine." He exhaled, pulling her close. "I love you, Amaka." "I love you too," she whispered. "But next time, no secrets. Promise." They kissed. Not the fireworks kind of kiss, but the kind that comes after a storm. Quiet, steady, healing. They started waking up together again. Not just in the same bed, but together, aligned, aware, whole. There was no more pretending, no more roles to play. He wasn't the billionaire. She wasn't the borrowed cleaner. They were just Tunde and Amaka, two people madly in love, and ready to build more than a mansion. They wanted to build meaning. One evening, as they lay beneath their garden's purple hibiscus tree, Amaka turned to him and said, "I want to open a school." Tunde blinked. "A school?" She nodded. "For girls like me, girls who were always told they were only good for house chores or market selling. I want to teach them to dream, to speak boldly, to lead." Tunde's chest rose with admiration. "You're incredible." She chuckled. "You knew that when you borrowed me." They laughed. Then Tunde sat up. "I'll fund it. I'll build it, but you will own it." "No," she said, touching his chest. "We will build it, but I'll run it." They named it the Cleaner Foundation Academy. Because where you come from, Amaka said during the launch, should never define how far you can go. Girls from villages and slums came pouring in. Amaka taught self-worth, etiquette, financial literacy, hygiene, English and coding. Tunde came in every Wednesday to mentor and listen. Dio too sometimes, with his books and shy smile. The school grew quickly. So did Amaka's confidence. She was no longer just the sweet woman in the background. She was a force. And Tunde? He was her biggest cheerleader. One morning, while brushing her hair, Amaka felt different. Nausea, fatigue, a certain weight in her chest. She took the test 3 times, then sat quietly for an hour before telling Tunde. When he saw the strip, his eyes widened, then teared up. "You're pregnant?" he whispered. She nodded, scared and excited. He knelt before her, kissed her belly gently. "Hello, little miracle." Their home became a sanctuary. Dio had his own room, painted sky blue with stars on the ceiling. Tunde's mother moved in, healthier now, full of gentle wisdom. The garden became Amaka's prayer place, where she spoke blessings over her unborn child every morning. They still fought sometimes, over baby names, over business schedules, but their love had matured. It could hold arguments without cracking. It could bend and still not break. 9 months later, on a rainy Monday morning, Amaka went into labor. It was long, painful, intense. Tunde never left her side. When the baby finally arrived, a soft cry filled the hospital room. It was a girl. They named her Tendara, meaning she who brings light. Tunde held her like she was the most fragile, precious thing in the world. "You made me a father." "Again," he whispered. "But this time I'm ready." One afternoon, months later, Amaka walked into their living room and saw the housekeeper mopping. She smiled, then gently took the mop from her. "Let me finish this one." "Ah, madam, no, oh." But Amaka insisted. She mopped the tiled floor slowly, her baby strapped to her back. Tunde walked in, paused and shook his head in wonder. "Why are you mopping?" he asked. She smiled, turning toward him. "Because sometimes it's good to remember where it all started." Time passed, softly, like morning mist over a quiet village. The whirlwind slowed, but the love, it stayed. Not just stayed, it deepened. Tunde and Amaka didn't just survive their story, they lived it. And in living it, they planted something bigger than a love story. They planted a legacy. Sunlight filtered through their bedroom window. Amaka stirred first, her baby nestled beside her. Tunde lay sprawled, snoring softly with one hand on the child's tiny foot. She watched them and smiled. She no longer pinched herself to confirm if it was real. This was her life, her story. From the cleaner with second-hand slippers to the wife of the man everyone wanted, but only she truly knew. They visited her old neighborhood one quiet Sunday. She wore a scarf. Tunde wore jeans and a plain t-shirt. No guards, no convoy. Just them. The street was still the same. Scent of Akara from Mama Felicia's stand. Children running barefoot. One girl looked up. "Auntie Amaka?" A small crowd gathered. Cheers, hugs, laughter. Someone shouted, "You see Am? She no forget where she come from." Amaka knelt, hugged the little girl, and whispered, "Don't stop dreaming, okay? Look at me." Tunde watched her from afar, proud, in awe. They surprised her mother with a visit. A new bungalow, furnished to taste, stood where her old zinc house used to be. Mama stood at the doorway, wrapper tied tightly. "My Pekin," she said, breaking into tears. Amaka held her close. "I told you I'd be more than a house girl." Mama smiled through tears. "And now you're the queen of queens." They sat under the mango tree that evening. Mama watched her granddaughter sleep on Amaka's lap. "Promise me you'll raise her to love herself." "I promise," Amaka whispered. "And to always speak the truth, even when it hurts." 5 years later, the Cleaner Foundation had built 6 schools across Nigeria. They held their first fundraising gala in Abuja. Tunde stood tall beside his wife but let her shine. Amaka spoke to a hall of over 500 donors and dignitaries. She began simply, "Once upon a time I was a cleaner. I scrubbed floors for people who wouldn't even look me in the eye. And then one man saw me, not as a servant, but as a someone. That man is my husband. But more than that, he's my partner in purpose." The hall gave a standing ovation. Tunde wiped his eyes. At 18, Dio graduated as valedictorian. Tunde held his shoulder as he gave his speech, but Dio looked directly at Amaka. People called Tunde my father, and yes, he gave me his name, but the person who raised me with heart, who told me to believe in love, who taught me that I was enough, is the woman I now proudly call Mum. Thank you, Amaka. She broke into tears. Dio hugged her tightly. You gave me a home. They didn't live in the city anymore. They moved to a serene town by a lake, where birds sang, and their daughter, Tandara, grew wild and free. Tunde read novels by the porch. Amaka gardened. They held hands as they walked to the village chapel on Sundays. No flash, no paparazzi. Just love and peace. One afternoon, while sorting old things, Tunde found Amaka's diary, the same one she kept since she was a cleaner. He opened the final page. It read, I never thought I would marry a billionaire. I never thought I'd be loved like this. But life taught me that grace finds the lowly, and love finds the bold. If you're reading this, I hope you never forget. You are never too small to be chosen. You are never too dirty to be loved. You are never too broken to be rebuilt. My name is Amaka, and this is just the beginning of my forever. The end.